much challenged by all the questions in the question bars, and but I would like to go back to the really speech by Lauren Bradford, and specifically on the final provocation of Lauren, really this powerful call to action that she was posing to us all in really thinking how we could be better in funding people, partnership, and organizations, and in really trying to fund in a different way in order to enable civil society organizations to be more resilient, more capable, more bolder and stronger in face of this VUCA world, where we still use a mainstream funding practice that is not able to face the complexity and the connected challenges that we have in front of us. Lauren was referring at a certain point to some practices in funding practice that could really be very meaningful and shifting the relationship between grant makers, funders, and grantees, also for non-radical funders. Of course, not all funders in Europe will become system change funders. There will be funders that will keep funding civil society organization in the health sector, in the social protection sector, and so on. But my point is really about enlarging the general operating support, which Lauren was defining the most basic, the minimum standard layer for all funders, really to shift the funding practices in order to have a stronger civil society organization. And I was thinking, listening to Lauren, when 12 years ago, I read a mind-blowing article for me in Stanford Social Innovation Review on nonprofit starvation cycle, really calling private funders to take the lead in breaking the vicious cycle that was leaving nonprofits so hungry for decent organization that they could not barely function as organization, let alone serving their beneficiaries. And in that nonprofit starvation cycle, there were like three reciprocal elements that Anne Goggins-Gregory and Don Howard, the authors of the nonprofit starvation cycle in the University of Stanford, were highlighting and forming the vicious cycle. And this cycle was really starting with unrealistic expectation on the part of funders on the running cost, on the general operating cost for nonprofit, with the second element, the adjustment, misrepresentation of overhead cost by civil society organization, which in turn spend little or report less than they spent, reinforcing this wrong and unrealistic expectation on the part of funders. And then third element, the perpetuating might that nonprofits are expected to do more and more with less and less. And this is still so true after 12 years. And even in the question bars, there was several questions about we are keeping on the same question and really going to the cultural norm that are restraining funders to embrace more enabling, flexible, humble approaches. Of course, the movement for flexibility among funders has been growing a lot. I mean, during the pandemic, 186 foundations in Europe have signed Together We Stand as a declaration, as a pledge, really encouraging more flexible funding practice. In the US, we're almost 800 signatories. But really, I think that the pandemics and the war now have really shown to all of us how important it is to be more flexible as funders in order to allow really the people on the ground, the organization on the ground, to respond in the most effective ways. But still there is a lot there in terms of risk aversion, in terms of blame avoidance. So call for proposal, project cycle management are really tools that are still very much mainstream, because we assure funders that, and so there is a lot there. And of course, the provocation of Lauren were very, very inspiring on funding practice for becoming more radical in terms of flexibility, which is wonderful. But I loved this perspective that there are certain ambition that could be really embedded in the funding practice of every funder, like general operations support, really investing in people, in partnership, in networks, in organization, and not earmarking just activities and tiny output and tiny list of activities in order to tie funders to this kind of starvation.